There is a very common fear among parents during complementary feeding, the fear of allergenic foods: egg, peanut, fish, dairy, wheat. These foods are often delayed, avoided, or offered with so much caution that they end up not being a consistent part of the baby's routine. That fear is understandable. But science shows that avoidance is not the safer strategy. In fact, delaying the introduction of these foods can increase the risk of allergy, rather than reduce it. During complementary feeding, which is recommended to continue until 2 years of age, the goal is for the baby to experience the widest possible variety of foods, including allergens, and for that introduction to happen early and safely. In this video, you will learn exactly how to introduce each of the main allergenic foods safely, step by step. If you want more content like this about baby nutrition, subscribe to the channel. We publish every week. Now let's get into it. Number 1. Why early introduction reduces allergy risk. Before talking about each specific food, it is important to understand the logic behind this recommendation, because it goes against what many parents learned just a few years ago. For decades, the standard guidance was to delay the introduction of allergenic foods, especially in babies with a family history of allergy. The logic seemed to make sense. If a food can cause an allergy, it might be better to wait until the immune system matures before offering it. That guidance was revised based on robust clinical studies. The most well-known of these is the LEAP study, published in 2015, which followed babies at high risk of peanut allergy. The results showed that babies who received peanut early and regularly, starting around 4 to 6 months, had up to an 80% reduction in the risk of developing peanut allergy, compared to babies whose introduction was delayed. The biological explanation for this phenomenon relates to how the baby's immune system learns to recognize food proteins. When a food is introduced orally, early and regularly, the immune system tends to develop tolerance to that protein. When exposure is delayed, or when the first exposure to the food happens through the skin, for example in cases of eczema, the immune system has a higher chance of developing an allergic response. Based on this and other evidence, the American Academy of Pediatrics and other pediatric societies around the world revised their guidelines. The current recommendation is that allergenic foods be introduced early, from 6 months of age, alongside the other foods of complementary feeding, and that this introduction be maintained regularly after the first offer. Number 2, the safety protocol for the first offer. Regardless of which allergenic food you are introducing, there is a basic safety protocol that should be followed for the first offer of each one. First, offer the allergenic food at home, never in a setting where access to medical care would be difficult or delayed. Avoid introducing a new allergen before travel, before bedtime, or at times when you will not be able to closely observe the baby in the following hours. Second, introduce one new allergen at a time. If you are testing egg and peanut in the same week, offer them on different days, not at the same meal. This is essential because if a reaction occurs, you need to know exactly which food was responsible. Third, start with a small amount. A full portion is not necessary the first time. A small amount is enough to observe the baby's response. Fourth, observe the baby for the next 2 hours after the offer. Most immediate allergic reactions occur within that window. Watch for signs such as red marks on the skin, swelling around the mouth, eyes or face, vomiting, persistent coughing, breathing difficulty, or a change in the baby's behavior, such as excessive drowsiness or unusual irritability. Fifth, if any sign of a reaction appears, especially breathing difficulty, significant swelling, or repeated vomiting, seek emergency medical attention immediately. Mild reactions, such as slight redness around the mouth with no other symptoms, usually do not indicate an emergency, but should still be reported to the pediatrician. If the first offer happens without any reaction, the next step is to keep the food in the baby's diet regularly, ideally a few times per week. Studies show that maintaining regular exposure is just as important as early introduction for ensuring tolerance to the food. Number 3, how to introduce egg. Egg is one of the most common allergens in early childhood, but also one of the easiest to introduce safely. The recommended way to offer it for the first time is fully cooked egg, with white and yolk together, since it is the protein in the egg white that carries the highest allergenic potential, and joint exposure to white and yolk is what helps build tolerance. The most practical options for the first introduction are well-cooked scrambled egg, with no added salt or seasoning, or hard-boiled egg, mashed with a fork to an appropriate texture for the baby's stage. Start with a small amount, equivalent to a teaspoon, and observe the baby for the following 2 hours. If the introduction happens without a reaction, the recommendation is to keep egg in the baby's diet 3 to 4 times per week as part of the main meals. Number 4. How to introduce peanut. Peanut is the food that causes the most concern among parents, but it is also the food with the most robust scientific evidence on the benefits of early introduction, thanks to the LEAP study mentioned earlier. Peanut should never be offered whole to a baby, as a whole peanut presents a real choking hazard. The safe way to introduce it is through 100% peanut butter with no added salt or sugar, diluted in a bit of warm water, breast milk, or mixed into a puree the baby already knows, such as banana or sweet potato puree. Another safe option is peanut ground into a very fine powder, which can be sprinkled over other foods. Start with a small amount, equivalent to half a teaspoon of diluted peanut butter, and observe the baby for the following 2 hours. Babies with moderate to severe eczema or a diagnosed egg allergy have a higher risk of peanut allergy. In these specific cases, the recommendation is to talk to the pediatrician before doing the first introduction at home, and in some cases the first offer may be done in a clinical setting under medical supervision. If the introduction happens without a reaction, the recommendation is to keep peanut in the baby's diet regularly, around 2 to 3 times per week, always in the safe forms mentioned above. Number 5. How to introduce fish and shellfish. Fish is an important allergen, but also one of the most valuable sources of omega-3 for the baby's brain development, which makes early introduction especially relevant. For the first offer, choose fish with low mercury levels, such as sardines, salmon, tilapia, or sole. Fish should always be well cooked, baked, or steamed, with no added salt or industrialized seasoning, and carefully flaked to ensure there are no bones. Start with a small amount and observe the baby for the following 2 hours. Shellfish, such as shrimp and other crustaceans, can be introduced following the same protocol, always well cooked and never raw or undercooked, due to the additional risk of microbiological contamination. Shellfish introduction is usually done a bit later than fish, generally once the baby is more advanced in textures, but there is no rigid minimum age beyond 6 months. If the introduction happens without a reaction, keep fish in the baby's diet 2 to 3 times per week, rotating between the safe varieties. Introducing allergenic foods does not need to be a constant source of anxiety. With the right protocol, it is safe, and the scientific evidence shows that this is exactly the strategy that protects the baby in the long run. Why early introduction reduces allergy risk, the safety protocol for the first offer, and how to introduce egg, peanut, fish, and shellfish specifically. This is the complete path to including allergens in your baby's diet with confidence. The description of this video has a free guide with the complete first-year feeding plan, what is safe, what to avoid, and when to introduce each food. Just click and download. In the next video, we cover 5 mistakes parents make when starting complementary feeding. See you then.